what I wanted to do today, I don't think this is going to be a difficult crowd to convince you that investing in the type of St. David's quality early childhood education is a great investment. I got a hunch I can convince you of that. And I'm going to go through some of that research. But there seems to be a disconnect here in our political system. While this is one of the highest public returns we can make, we're way under investing. Businesses wouldn't do this. This would be the low-hanging fruit. This would not go on. This would be fully funded. So what I'd like to do is, I get this question all the time. I got it from Larry right away. How does a guy at the Federal Reserve, whose expertise is pre-Civil War banking, guys, which, by the way, you didn't ask me to speak about. How do I get involved in early childhood education? Where does that come from? And so I'll quickly go over how that happened, and then I'll take you through the research. Two different independent lines of research, neuroscience and economic intervention research. And you'll see they both lead you to the same issue. We got to start early. And early, keep in mind, I'm going to talk prenatal to 5 when I talk about early childhood education. And then I'll conclude with how this research has led to some policy initiatives that we're doing here in Minnesota, led by the business community. I'll talk about an organization called the Minnesota Early Learning Foundation, and how the influence now, the work that we've done with the Minnesota Early Learning Foundation is influencing not just state policy, but national policy and international policy in a number of ways. And then we'll open it up for discussion, for questions. So how do I get started? A group of us would get together, every month, downtown Minneapolis. We'd invite a CEO, we'd invite an academic, a media person, an author, just come to lunch and talk about their passion. About 10 years ago, a man by the name of Todd Otis, former state representative, he was executive director of an organization called Ready for K, Ready for Kindergarten. Organization that was founded with the help of former Governor Al Quie and former Mayor of Minneapolis, Don Fraser. And Todd is up at this lunch talking about early childhood education and development. And they've got a report that's about this thick. They're asking for a lot of money. And finishes his presentation, and I'm not real happy with it. I raised my hand and I said, Todd, you're basically making an immoral argument. I don't disagree with the moral argument, that this is the right thing to do. But I don't think you're going to have any political legs. You're asking for a lot of money. You can make moral arguments for investing more in K through 12, higher education, reducing crime, reducing pollution. There's a host of things. Policymakers need to be able to prioritize. They have to figure out where is the best investment. And I said, you're not going to get that without an economic analysis. And as I tell people, that was my mistake. So sure enough, the next day, Todd comes by and says, Rolnick, we agree with you. And then they had the governor call me and the mayor call me, and it was hard to say no to these guys. So I went back, and I had a young colleague of mine who was in my public affairs department who does the education outreach for the Fed. Rob Grunwald is his name. And I said, Rob, I've committed us to doing this. But I said to him, look, it's probably going to be pretty obvious. We'll go to the research, we'll summarize it, we'll give Ready for K the report, we're done. Basically, that's what we did. It took us a few months, handed it to Al Quie and Don Fraser and Todd Otis, and so that was 10 years ago. And I'd say every week since we wrote that report, because they start pushing it out, Rob and I have been invited to speak somewhere. In fact, right now he's in LA speaking on this issue. I've been all over the world. I found myself about 6 months later down in Orlando, Florida as the guest of then Governor Jeb Bush. This was the governor's national conference. A day was focused on early childhood education. 6 months after that, guest of the Prime Minister of Turkey. My wife and I were in Istanbul. Must have had 300 delegates from all over the Middle East and Europe. The Queen of Jordan was there. It was amazing. When she walked in, let me tell you, the whole place stopped. The paparazzi was all out there. Okay. What did we say in this essay that got all this attention? I'm going to quickly go over one study. There's 4 of these longitudinal studies on interventions. And what I mean by an intervention, this is preschool. It's very famous in the education literature. Ypsilanti, Michigan, early 60s. 128 families, all at risk, randomly divided into two groups. So my statisticians out there, methodology doesn't get much better than this. One group gets high quality. And high quality in the 60s is not even close to what we're doing at St. David's here. So keep that in mind. But relatively speaking, they had master level teachers, small classroom size, and home visits focused on the parents. And then they have a control group that doesn't get these service. And then they follow the kids 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Rob and I had, the time we wrote, we had the 30-year study. We looked at the study, and here's what we found. We found that the kids that were in the program were less likely to be retained in the first grade, were less likely to need special ed, were more likely to be proficient by the 6th grade, graduate high school, get a job, stay off welfare, start a family. And the difference between the two groups in crime goes down 50%. So we asked a pretty basic question economists or business people would ask. These are 3- and 4-year-old kids, invested about, in today's dollars, about $10,000 per year, so a $20,000 investment. What was the return on that investment? Well, we had the cost of the program, and these benefits, we can put dollar values on these benefits, and there's a formula where you can back out what's called the internal rate of return, the annual rate of return on that investment. Now, I figure if we're going to try to convince our policymakers to invest in this, we better beat the market. So what's the market? Post-World War II, rate of return on the stock market, 5.8%. Not my 401k, but 5.8%. So I view that as the hurdle, okay? We got to beat 5.8%. We were figuring when we saw some of these benefits, we'd probably get 6, 7. We got an 18% inflation-adjusted return. Critics say, wait, one study. No, we've got 4 studies, all with double-digit returns. And we think we're underestimating it. Why? Because we didn't have data on the siblings in the family. We didn't have data on the parents and how they did. Turns out we have some anecdotal data that a number of these parents were able to go back to school and get a job and are doing much better, or were doing much better. We're just starting to get data on children of the children. When I presented some of these results at a dinner to the brand new chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, he said, send me all this stuff, Art. And 2 months later, he presented a speech down in Omaha on poverty. And at the end of the speech, he says, probably the best way to end intergenerational poverty was to invest in high quality early childhood education for most at-risk kids. As soon as he said that, I realized my job at the Fed, which was questionable now as I'm getting into offbeat here, my job was okay. My job was safe. So in a sense, that was the bottom line. At the end of this essay, we said, based on this research, we're going to argue you can't find a better investment, a better public investment. 10 years, no one's challenged that. We sent all our data to a man by the name of James Heckman, Nobel laureate at the University of Chicago. We went through all our data, came back with the same results. No one's challenged us on a better public investment. There was some additional research. So I mentioned the economic research. Now there's this neuroscience research. Keep this in mind. This is independent research, totally independent here. So statistically, this is pretty powerful. So what are the neuroscientists telling us about brain development? Brain development in what I'll call the foundation years, prenatal to 3, 4, most of your brain is developed by then, 80% or something. And what they show, if a child's in a stressful environment, and by stress, equate that with poverty, brain doesn't develop properly. In the extreme case, these were the Romanian orphans. Remember, the Romanian orphans had very little adult interaction? So, you know, they did images of those brains. At age 3, the brain is 1/3 smaller than what it should be. So my mentor, a man by the name of Jack Shunkoff, who's at Harvard now, the way Jack describes this is the debate between nature and nurture is over. We know that physical brain is affected by that interaction with those parents at the foundation years. We know that. So that led Rob and I, so this is the research. This is the research that I say is overwhelming. So where do you go with the research? How do you take that to the real world? Head Start, doing okay, but not getting these kind of results. So what's it going to take to get the 18% plus return? A couple of economists strongly believe in markets, so our approach shouldn't surprise you. It's very straightforward, very simple. Scholarships. scholarships for kids not to go to Harvard, but scholarships to at-risk kids to go to high-quality early ed programs. We actually call them Scholarship Plus. The plus is we start our kids prenatal with home visiting nurses. We've got, I won't even get into the health research because that should revolutionize healthcare system in this country. Those foundation years are also critical for long-term health, critical. Whether it's diabetes, heart disease, depression, you get a good start, you lower the probability of all these problems. So we start with home visiting nurses. It's been shown that a home visiting nurse starting especially the first child, teenage mom, there are fewer children afterwards, more likely to be born full weight, huge benefits there. So we start our moms prenatal with home visiting nurse, and then they get the scholarship when the kid turns 3. Gave this talk at a United Way board meeting. Fortunately for me, the chairman at that time was Warren Staley. Warren Staley was at that time CEO of Cargill, and afterwards Warren pulls me aside. He said, "Okay, Rolnick, I kind of believe you. Let's see if it'll work in practice." "Okay, Warren, what do you have in mind?" He says, "We're going to create a new organization. We're going to call it the Minnesota Early Learning Foundation. We're going to raise a bunch of money, and we're going to pilot it somewhere in the Twin Cities." So within a few months, come to the new board of this organization, and Warren's got a lot of his friends on the board. He's got Ken Powell, CEO of General Mills. He's got Mike Cerisi. He's got Charlie Weaver, formerly Palente's chief of staff, running the business partnership, representing 100 companies. Gene Taylor from the Taylor Corporation. Mike Fitterman from Liberty something. It's a manufacturing company. Who am I missing? Doug Baker from Ecolab. Bob Runix was on this board. Very distinguished, mostly a business-oriented board. Went out, raised $20 million, and we did 2 flagship things. First was created a quality rating system. You don't get the kind of results from the research that the research shows if you don't have high quality. I want to stress high quality over and over. It's one of the reasons I'm here. We need this kind of infrastructure that St. David's provides. We can't get these kind of results without the St. David's out there, with that kind of infrastructure. So we created a quality rating system, a 4-star rating system, and it's now in the process of going statewide, but it was first around the Twin Cities. And then the other flagship program was a scholarship program. And we did this in Frogtown because Chris Coleman, the mayor there, got wind of this. He came to us and he said, "Look, I'll put my staff to work on this," and convinced us to do it in Frogtown. So we circled Frogtown a little bit north of that neighborhood, and it was very simple. If you live in Frogtown, your income is 185% of poverty below, congratulations, your child gets a scholarship. That was it, as user-friendly as can be. You move, the scholarship goes with you. Even in the lottery, the scholarship stays with you. There was no, we were empowering these parents. Research is pretty clear. You better get these parents engaged and empowered. You don't get these results without that. And so now this is 5 years later, and our kids who are now entering kindergarten and the 1st grade, a significant number of them, are testing at close to the majority level. We're pretty sure we can close the achievement gap. We got some learning to do. My critics said, "Well, wait a minute, these are scholarships, it's going to be viewed as welfare, that's going to be tainted." I said, "I don't think so." And sure enough, we did focus groups with our parents, and they were quite touched that somebody cared that much about their children to give them a scholarship. Then my critics said, "You know, you don't have 4-star programs in Frogtown." I said, "Wait a second. When the market finds out that we have 650 families with scholarships paying up to $13,000 a year, you're going to get a supply response." Right? I mean, you don't have to manage this. The market does this for you. And sure enough, within 6 months, New Horizon opened up a brand new facility right on Rice Street. You can go there. Montessori expanded their program. St. Paul expanded theirs. A bunch of faith-based groups expanded theirs. There was no problem. The market responds. The market works. And now, see, under the Head Start regime, if you're a Head Start parent, they tell you, and it's true, you're lucky, because 70% of the eligible Head Start parents, there's no funding. And you're a Head Start parent, you're assigned to a school, you're assigned to a teacher, you don't like it, that's kind of too bad. We changed the paradigm. Now our parents have a scholarship. Now Head Start's got to treat you differently, because you can go to Montessori or you can go to St. Paul. school or you can go to a faith-based program. You, the parent, makes the decision. And Head Start realizes that, and we pay much better than what Head Start gets on average. So as a result, Head Start actually has gotten a lot better in St. Paul. Competition works. And about a third of our parents actually go to Head Start. Head Start people weren't happy with me at first. Now they're okay with me. So that's our bottom line. Let me just conclude with you know, what does it take? And this is why I like this approach. We know from the research, you got to start early. We do. You know from the research, you got to engage the parents. We do. You know from the research, it has to be high quality. Again, it's why I'm here tonight. We want to take this statewide. We need the St. David's all around the state to serve these kids.